Good afternoon and welcome to From Where We Are, stories of news and culture through the lens of USC and Southern California. I'm Jack Waterman.
And I'm Nia Harris. We start tonight with historic breaking news. Former President Donald Trump was indicted today by a Manhattan grand jury. This is the first time in American history that a current or former president has been indicted and will face criminal charges. The charges are not publicly known at this time, but Manhattan's district attorney has been investigating Trump for hush money payments allegedly made leading up to the 2016 presidential election. Trump's defense attorney says the former president will likely appear in court next week. Tonight, we look at what the indictment of Donald Trump might mean for the nation and for the 2024 presidential race. We're pleased to be joined live in studio by Christina Bellatoni. She's a longtime political reporter, former assistant managing editor of politics at the LA Times, and the current director of the Annenberg Media Center. Christina, thank you for joining us.
It's my pleasure to be here on Breaking News Night.
Yeah.
Yes. What does this mean for America?
It is an excellent question. The short answer is probably not a lot, right? Your day-to-day lives, it's raining, your, taxes are a certain amount,
Right.
or your, how much you pay for a gallon of gas. Like, this isn't going to affect all of this. It is historical in nature in a way that from now on, every child learning history in any way is going to understand that this happened no matter what the actual legal result ends with. I view this in sort of threefold. You've got the obvious legal consequences.
Yeah.
What will happen next? We will see a mugshot of a former president. We will see potentially an extended trial of a former president.
Sure.
Could he actually be convicted and serve any time? Maybe. In a related case, his fixer, the person who's sort of at the center of all of this, Michael Cohen, went to jail, served time. So, again, entirely possible that the facts are there that he is convicted, particularly if he does face a jury in a place where he is not liked.
Yeah.
That's one question. He's also facing potential other investigations, right, over interference with the 2020 election, looking at records that were not kept properly that had come out of the White House. So a lot of other things. This was in some ways the least likely thing to happen in all of the legal scholars' mind. And then here it's happened. Many other prosecutors kind of shied away from the case, didn't want to tackle it. Then you have the political consequences. Before I came down here, I took a look at a bunch of news websites, just how are people covering it. One of the most important presidential nominating states in 2024 is going to be South Carolina.
Yep.
There is no mention of this on the largest newspaper's homepage.
Wow.
Not that they're not covering it or they're slow or they're short-staffed. It's there.
Yeah.
It's buried on the politics page. You have to scroll 4 times before you can find an Associated Press story of it. That told me a lot.
Yeah.
The Des Moines Register, Iowa's another very important early nominating state for the Republican process, of who's going to challenge President Biden. There's a mention of it. It's kind of localized. Here's what Chuck Grassley has to say. Here's what the other Iowa senator Joni Ernst has to say.
Yeah.
So looking at kind of that political consequence, in the end, it emboldens people who think this was a political witch hunt.
Yeah.
It further angers and excites people who don't like him. Is there any consequence of that? Probably doesn't change anything. And then there's the sort of bigger question.
Yeah.
Is this a threat to democracy? Is this a politically charged investigation? The judicial process is supposed to be blind. It's supposed to be extremely impartial. And we've already seen the politicization of this branch of government. It's already broken. So it kind of doesn't even matter what happens because people don't have faith in their institutions anymore. Not to be depressing.
Yeah.
But there's a lot there. There. But, this moment in history, it's a big news moment. It's a big news story for you all to get to cover. And I'm going to be watching really closely to see what exactly that indictment says. And we already know the president's lawyers, we should always point out, have said, this is false. He didn't do anything wrong. He's innocent. That will be proven. This is bogus.
Yeah. So you mentioned faith in institutions and how this certainly doesn't help. Kind of what will the impact of this be on that faith in institutions? And does this in some way divide the country even more? Does it bring us together to know that even, a former president can still be indicted, under the law? What does this do for that?
It's a question I almost want to turn back to young people. I frequently talk to people, about your ages. What do you know about politics? Do you have a lot of faith in the system as it is? I think about, in your lifetimes, a president was decided by the Supreme Court. You've had these disputed elections.
Yeah.
The Electoral College system is broken. Like, there's all these problems. So maybe that faith isn't really there. Some people looked at all of these investigations that he's a former president. Nothing will ever happen. If anything does, he'll get a slap on the wrist. It doesn't matter. Nothing matters. Sure. But in the end, we do have people who took a look at charges in a process known as the grand jury, right? That has a set of restrictions and a set of laws, and it appears to have been on the up and up. Again, that's from my perspective as an outsider. I'm not covering this closely, but that might restore some faith in these institutions. It's possible. I can only guess that a trial will be a complete circus, and that's probably not good.
Yeah. Well, lots to come, lots of great information. We appreciate your wonderful insight. Again, this has been Christina Bellantoni, Director of the Annenberg Media Center. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much
really
for joining.
Thank you.
Former President Trump issued a response today on today's indictment on his social media site, Truth Social. He called the indictment political persecution and election interference at the highest level in history. Trump wrote, quote, "The Democrats have lied, cheated, and stolen in their obsession with trying to get Trump. But now they've done the unthinkable, indicting a completely innocent person in an act of blatant election interference. Never before in our nation's history has this been done." Trump added, quote, "I believe this witch hunt will backfire massively on Joe Biden. The American people realize exactly what the radical left Democrats are doing here." We'll be sure to bring you more in the coming days on this historic story. And now, let's turn to other headlines in today's news.
Russia has arrested Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovich today on spying charges in a statement by the Federal Security Service. Gershkovich is accused of collecting information constituting a state secret about the activities of one of the enterprises of the Russian military-industrial complex. The Wall Street Journal has rejected those allegations. A Russian district court in Moscow said that Gershkovich would be detained until May 29.
Mark Ridley Thomas, one of Los Angeles County's most prominent politicians, was found guilty today of federal corruption charges related to special benefits his son received at USC. Of the 19 counts against Ridley Thomas, jurors found him guilty of 7, including conspiracy, bribery, and 4 counts of honest services wire fraud. He now faces the possibility of years in federal prison and the permanent loss of his seat on the LA City Council.
E3, historically one of the biggest gaming expos in the world, will be canceled for a second year in a row. Since 1995, many major video game and industry announcements were made at this event. This cancellation comes after major companies like Sony, Nintendo, and Microsoft pulled out of the convention. Jeff Keighley, founder of the Game Awards, reacted on Twitter, saying, quote, "4 years ago, I realized that E3 wasn't evolving as it needed to compete in a global digital world." These are some of the top stories in the news today.
Taiwanese President Tsai Ing-wen has planned a tentative visit to Los Angeles on her way back to Taiwan next week. The potential stop comes at the end of the world leaders' tour of global diplomatic allies that began yesterday afternoon. With Taiwan being formally recognized by only 13 countries and tensions mounting between the US and China, Tsai's visit could have major geopolitical consequences. Jonathan Martin has the story.
Arriving in New York yesterday, President Tsai of Taiwan is set to spend the day in Manhattan before traveling on to Guatemala and Belize. Her visit to Southern California is speculated to take place on April 5th at the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library in Ventura County, though that is yet to be officially confirmed. Tsai's potential trip comes less than a year after former Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi traveled to Taiwan last August. And as they did for Pelosi's visit, the Chinese government has strongly reacted to the idea of meeting between current Speaker Kevin McCarthy and President Tsai. Spokespeople for the Chinese government said that the country will assuredly take measures to fight back and that the meeting could catalyze a serious confrontation in the China-U.S. relationship. Eric Hakila teaches at USC's Price School of Public Policy. He's a faculty member at USC's U.S.-China Institute. Hakila believes the mediation of this conflict lies in finding the middle ground. Hakila adds that it's important to show that the attempt at resolution is genuine.
And if it could be done in the way that we had been talking about before, in a way that's looking to calm things down and to resolve things rather than to sort of looking to raise the temperature in ways that are not necessary and in fact may be counterproductive.
It's currently unclear how exactly China might respond to the meeting, should it occur, but Hekila says it'll likely be similar to what we've seen before.
There's a whole broad range of things that they could be doing. I mean, one that's likely is some kind of demonstration of military show of force, as was done when Speaker Pelosi went to Taiwan last year.
And he says that there are other ways global superpower China could respond.
Other avenues as well. There are the economic ties. There are also sort of collateral moves in other arenas. For example, I think it was today that President Xi Jinping announced sort of further military cooperation with Russia. And one doesn't know, but that might have also been sort of in the balance. Well, if you're going to cause trouble there, we're going to cause trouble here.
Aside from the possible geopolitical impacts of the meeting, President Tsai's potential visit to LA also has very personal implications. Amos Pai is a member of USC's Taiwanese Student Association. He is also politically active and has interned for a small political party in Taiwan. On the topic of the meeting, he had this to say.
But I also think that Taiwan is going to be used as a way for both parties to prove that they're better in regards of how they handle diplomatic relationships.
While leaders are still waiting with bated breath for confirmation on the meeting between Tsai and McCarthy, Hekila says it's more than likely the two will sit down early next week. For Annenberg Media, I'm Jonathan Martin.
Crime has many on edge throughout the nation in the face of what feels like a world that gets less safer by the day. In light of this, the Los Angeles Police Department released its annual report on homicide on Tuesday afternoon, presenting new data that points to an improving situation. We go to Lawrence Song on this crucial update on the safety of Angelenos this past year.
Surrounded by several police department leaders, Los Angeles Police Chief Michael Moore presented key facts, figures, and updates from the 2022 end-of-year homicide report at a Tuesday afternoon press conference in downtown LA. He opened his remarks by acknowledging the importance of the report's focus.
We recognize that homicides devastate communities. It grips people with fear. It causes immeasurable damage to families, friends, and loved ones.
Overall, the city saw a 5% decrease in homicides in 2022. The biggest decrease in homicides occurred in the areas south of the 10 freeway, with 27 fewer homicides than in 2021. Guns are still the primary murder weapon in homicide cases by a large margin, and 232 fewer guns were seized last year. However, the clearance rate, or the amount of crimes resolved with an arrest or being investigated to its fullest extent, increased to 75%, up from 68% in 2021. One of the biggest announcements at the press conference was the launch of a new LAPD website dedicated to tracking homicides. It will not only list victims' names and photos, but also tell people the date of the homicide, as well as whether any arrests were made in connection to it.
It's our hope that as people see those victims, recognize that they represent a life not just lost, but a devastation for an entire family. That'll help drive our communities to help in the most crucial resource, and that is their voice, and helping us understand those responsible for this gun violence.
Despite the report's good news, local residents have mixed feelings about LA safety, expressing tiredness over the whole situation.
I feel like walking around hasn't felt safe for a while, and just knowing that information makes it a little bit more scary.
Shelley Fleming, who lives in downtown LA, said she witnessed a homeless person attack someone with a pole.
Disappointing, because I lived in Hollywood and then I moved to downtown, I've been in LA for 7 years. So both places are kind of full of crime, and just it can get tiring having to be really cautious about the areas that you go to.
In contrast to Fleming, Hollywood Hills resident Richard Kaplan feels that things are a lot safer in downtown LA recently.
Well, certainly I don't feel unsafe down here, but I've been working down here on and off for 30 years, and it's a lot safer than it's ever been by far.
For Annenberg Media, I'm Lawrence Sung.
Six California Highway Patrol officers, one CHP sergeant, and a nurse were charged Wednesday in the 2020 death of 38-year-old Edward Bronstein. While most uses of force by police are deemed legal and justified in California, the bizarre series of events which followed a traffic stop for suspected impaired driving led to Bronstein's death and a number of charges, including involuntary manslaughter. Video released by the CHP shows officers forcibly drawing Bronstein's blood as he continuously told them he couldn't breathe. Spencer Klein has the story.
On March 31st, 2020, Edward Bronstein was pulled over and taken into custody on the 5 freeway in Burbank, California, by 2 highway patrol officers under suspicion of driving under the influence. A video filmed by the sergeant shows a handcuffed Bronstein being led into their Altadena station garage, where officers informed him that he had a court order to obtain a sample of his blood. On Wednesday, Los Angeles County District Attorney George Gascon announced the charges in Bronstein's death, which the LA County coroner said was caused by acute methamphetamine intoxication during resistance by law enforcement. The officers had obtained a warrant to draw Bronstein's blood before forcing him to the ground and pinning their weight on top of him. Here's Gascon.
These officers had a legal duty to Mr. Bronstein. He was in their custody. We believe that they failed their duty, and their failure was criminally negligent, causing his death.
An arraignment has not yet been scheduled. Last March, a judge hearing the family's wrongful death lawsuit ordered the release of an 18-minute video of what happened at the station. Please be advised as the following audio is disturbing.
I can't breathe! I can't breathe! I can't breathe!
Just stop yelling!
I can't breathe! I can't breathe! I can't breathe! I can't! Please help! I can't breathe! I'll do it willingly!
That was Bronstein crying on his knees repeatedly that he can't breathe and even screaming that he would do the blood draw willingly as the officers press his body onto the ground. But the officers respond that it's too late as Bronstein's voice gets softer and softer until eventually falling silent. While he is unresponsive, the nurse works to draw the blood of the pinned down Bronstein. It takes over 10 minutes to pass since his last screams for officers realize he does not have a pulse and begin CPR. Bronstein never regained consciousness and was later pronounced dead. The 7 officers face 1 count of involuntary manslaughter and 1 felony count of assault under the color of authority. The DA's office also charged that the registered nurse has obtained a blood sample with involuntary manslaughter. If convicted, they can get up to 4 years in prison. If this incident sounds familiar, it may be because Bronstein died less than 2 months before George Floyd was killed by police in Minneapolis as he told police officers repeatedly that he cannot breathe. Almost a year and a half later, California Governor Gavin Newsom signed the law that barred police from using certain face-down holds that have led to multiple unintended deaths. They include putting a suspect's face down and then applying pressure on their backs with hands, elbows, or knees. The bill expanded the state's existing ban on chokeholds in the wake of Floyd's murder. For Annenberg Media, I'm Spencer Klein.
Hey, take me out to the ball game. Take me out with the crowd. Buy me some peanuts.
Tonight, the Dodgers get ready to face off against the Arizona Diamondbacks in a historic opening night game at Chavez Ravine to hit off the 2023 MLB season. In addition to changes like the decrease from 76 to 52 divisional games, this season is home to an unprecedented amount of adjustments to the game. Alexis Laura has the story.
After being approved by a joint competition committee this past October, Major League Baseball is introducing 3 new rules for the 2023 baseball season in an effort to speed up the pace of games and create more exciting action on the field. As the most significant set of rule changes since the adoption of the designated hitter in 1973, these rules are set to impact all aspects of the game. To ensure that these rules were fair and playable, all rule changes were play-tested in more than 8,000 minor league games before the implementation into the major leagues, and were enforced during spring training games to allow for an adjustment period for players before opening day. As the average 9-inning MLB game typically lasts for around 3 hours, even reaching up to 8 hours, baseball has been criticized for being a slow-paced sport compared to other sports. This has been attributed to a downhill trend in viewership, with the World Series in 2022 receiving an average of 11.8 million viewers, 50% down from the audience in 2016. The three biggest changes include a pitch clock, ending the shift, and limiting pickoff attempts. Only time will tell if these rule changes will impact player performance. Reactions from baseball fans have been mixed. Jonathan Williams is a master's student at USC. He hopes the rule change will allow more people to share his love of the sport.
Yeah, like you have these baseball traditionalists that just they don't like any move. Like they don't want any sort of change. They don't want any sort of change in direction or changing of the guard. I think the new rules will really just help grow the game.
Taj Khan is a political science major who gravitates towards fast-paced sports.
Because I like football and basketball more. Baseball is very confusing and it's way too long. So it's going to speed up the game for sure. It's going to be awesome.
Oscar Brito is a journalism major that appreciates baseball in its original lengthy state.
It's part of the rule now. It's literally in the rule book, so you can't really be mad. You have to just actually follow the rules. So it's unfortunate, but it's part of the rules, so I understand. I'd be pissed though as a fan.
However, the most influential change came in the new pitching rule, which forces pitchers to start their motion before the expiration of a 15 to 20 second timer, depending on if there's a runner on base, cutting the time of a baseball game down by 20 minutes. A huge transition from the reset mechanic that pitchers often utilize to prolong their time. With opening night baseball underway, fans have all different opinions on these new rules that will be enforced tonight. What it means for the future of the MLB will be decided, one strike at a time. For Annenberg Media, I'm Alexis Lara.
Another round of admissions at USC has come and gone, and this year with some historic stats. It has been USC's most selective year yet, and also its most expensive. We took to the streets of campus to ask Curtin students what they think of the numbers.
USC's acceptance rate this year is 11.5%, and that's our lowest rate ever. The total number of applicants grew by 17%. So USC is looking more and more popular. But how many of these people who are accepted will actually join the 2023 freshman class? And in terms of diversity, what will the upcoming class look like?
I've heard that it's gotten harder and harder to get in, which really reflects well on the school in terms of how many people want to come.
That's Eli Jingold. He's a junior majoring in business, and he's right. A lower acceptance rate is impressive and something USC can be proud of. And as another point of pride, this is one of the most diverse groups ever admitted to USC. USC's administration is trumpeting this diverse incoming class, citing acceptances of 33% historically underrepresented racial or ethnic groups, 19% international students, and only 12% legacies. Part of the reason for the increase in applicants is simply a national trend. Many colleges across the U.S. had a high number of applicants. And USC also debuted its early action admission option this year, says a freshman international relations global business major, Leo Yang.
I feel like they opened the whole early action thingy so that more people are applying. That's part of the reason that so many people are applying. The admission rates dropped.
But admission rates and who actually joins the freshman class are two different things. While it's great to have a diverse group of students accepted, will translate to a diverse freshman student body in the fall. The financial barriers to USC remain stubbornly high, and the costs continue to rise. USC's tuition today is over $60,000. Make that over $66,000. USC this month approved a 5% tuition increase for next year. Kalalapa Winter is a freshman majoring in acting for stage and screen.
This wasn't actually my dream school. Not gonna lie, I thought it was for like just rich kids, and I'm not one of those. And I got into my dream school with a scholarship, but USC offered me like a larger career. I don't know necessarily if it's worth going into the debt because there are just people that are never gonna get out of that debt. Like so many of us are like risking a lot by like putting ourselves into debt like I am. So I'm really hoping it's gonna be worth it. Check back with me in 20 years and we'll see if I'm stuck in debt or not.
USC offers substantial financial aid to many incoming students. Whether or not that will be enough to encourage and allow for a truly diverse student body remains to be seen. From Annenberg Media, I'm Andy Kalinowski.
And that's all we have time for on today's From Where We Are. Spencer Klein, Jeffrey Lee, Ethan Huang, and Daishlin Satcher produced today's show. We also had some help today from Leela Boulalad, Cameron Brewer, Nicholas Din, Josh Flowers, Safira Khan, and Soli Malley.
Derek Renfro composed our theme music. Matt Chin runs our soundboard. Our live stream manager is Nina Muntadat. Be sure to check us out on YouTube at Annenberg Radio News. I'm Nia Harris.
And I'm Jack Waterman. From all of us at Annenberg Radio, wherever you are, we'll hope you'll join us again for From Where We Are. Ooh, 2027. That's a long ways away.
Sounds so far away.
Best of luck. Congratulations, everyone.
Congratulations.
See ya.